A woman's life unravels as her husband reconnects with his ill ex. Can she reclaim her happiness and protect her family amidst the turmoil? Join her journey of resilience and self-discovery. A disturbing surprise. I never expected my life to take such a turn, especially not after 5 years of marriage. My husband, whom I love dearly, suddenly decided to reconnect with his high school sweetheart. At first, it seemed innocent enough, a mere blast from the past. But then, I learned the truth. She was seriously ill. She had kidney failure and was in our city for treatment, and out of the blue, my husband wanted to help her. To say I was taken aback would be an understatement. I remember sitting down with him, my heart racing as I tried to voice my concerns. Does she not have her own people to help her? I asked, genuinely perplexed. His reaction was intense. He was furious with me, accusing me of being petty and immature. It was a shocking response. I was only trying to understand why he felt this overwhelming need to be involved. I suggested alternatives, like financing her nursing care or helping her find a place nearby, but those suggestions only fueled his anger further. He said he was disappointed in me for showing jealousy over a past relationship. Jealousy? No, I felt more like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, peering into an abyss. I knew it wasn't about jealousy, it was about boundaries. I was a mother of twins, and I didn't want to play a role in nursing his ex. I was afraid of what this meant for our marriage. I felt like I was losing him even as I spoke. He could be helping her without getting personally involved, couldn't he? But the conversation spiraled, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. As the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were heading towards a dark place. It was becoming increasingly clear that I was fighting not just for my feelings, but for my family. How could I navigate this complicated web? Was I really being unreasonable, or was he crossing a line? I felt like I was on shaky ground, and I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. The breaking point. After days of turmoil, I decided to try again. My parents were visiting soon, and I thought maybe I could get through to him one last time. It felt like a fragile truth, so I approached the conversation carefully, trying to find common ground. It's unfair to me and the boys that you want to be an emotional support for your ex, I said, hoping to make him understand. His reaction was swift and jarring. He claimed it was tragic that I didn't trust him after all we had been through. How could he not see my point? I wasn't accusing him of infidelity. I was trying to protect our family. But he seemed adamant that my desire for emotional boundaries was unreasonable. The more I tried to explain, the more frustrated he became. I was met with accusations of being selfish. He insisted that compassion for a sick person was a basic human instinct. I felt my stomach twist. I wasn't arguing against compassion. I was arguing against blurring the lines of our marriage. As our argument escalated, I couldn't help but think about the emotional infidelity lurking beneath the surface. This could easily lead to something more dangerous if we weren't careful. I started reflecting on the importance of boundaries and how they protect the sanctity of a relationship. The moment my son woke up, interrupting our heated discussion was a relief, but it also left me feeling more uncertain than ever. I needed to find clarity, but it was clear that my husband's priorities were shifting. How could I maintain my own dignity while he was entangled in this situation? I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, and as I tried to gather my thoughts, I knew I needed to take a stand for my own well-being. A chance encounter. Days turned into a week, and I was still grappling with the fallout of our conversations. My husband's insistence on helping his ex began to feel like a slow poison in our relationship. I was trying to be a good partner, but I felt increasingly marginalized. I knew I needed to take action, and I started to disentangle our finances, which had been merged over the years. Then fate intervened. I went to the dialysis unit to collect my husband's insurance file, and I ran into her. I had never met her before, but she recognized me instantly. My heart raced as she approached me with a nurse. She sat me down and, with a startling directness, confessed her feelings for my husband. I never stopped loving him, she said, plainly, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. My mind raced as I processed her words. Was this really happening? Here she was, a woman who had once been a significant part of his life, openly expressing her desire to rekindle that relationship. I walked away from that encounter feeling numb. I had always respected the boundaries of our marriage and believed he would do the same. But now, faced with this blatant admission, I felt betrayed. I went home and confronted my husband. When I told him what had happened, he didn't deny it. Instead, he admitted that being around her reignited feelings he thought were long gone. My heart shattered. I had been fighting for my marriage, and here he was, ready to throw it away without a second thought. I realized this was more than just an emotional entanglement. It was a full-blown crisis. What would I do next? I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, and every direction seemed dark. Part 4. The calm after the storm. After that fateful encounter, everything changed. I felt a strange calmness wash over me, like the eye of a storm. While my heart was heavy with the knowledge of his lingering feelings for her, I also felt a sense of clarity. I had been holding on to a relationship that was slipping through my fingers. As I navigated the next days, I focused on what I could control. I started preparing for the inevitable. I knew I had to put my foot down and create boundaries. It was time to prioritize my own mental health and the well-being of my twin boys. I was not going to let my husband's choices dictate my happiness any longer. I spoke with my parents, who were incredibly supportive. They reminded me that I had built a life for myself and my children, and I deserved to protect that. They helped me see that I could be a strong, independent woman ready to face whatever came next. But the reality of our finances weighed heavily on me. I had invested so much into our relationship, both emotionally and financially. I had to disentangle our joint investments, which were proving to be a complex task. I felt the pressure mounting, and the thought of legal proceedings loomed over me like a dark cloud. But I was resolved. I would not let him take advantage of my kindness any longer. As the days passed, it became clear that I was ready to file for divorce. But how would I navigate the emotional fallout, especially for my boys? I felt a mix of determination and dread, knowing that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. I had to brace myself for the next phase of this journey and prepare for the battles that lay ahead. Part 5. The beginning of the end. I decided it was time to file for divorce. It felt surreal to be taking such a life-altering step, but I knew it was necessary. I had tried everything to salvage our relationship, but his actions spoke louder than words. I was ready to reclaim my life and prioritize the happiness of my children above all. My husband's attitude towards our marital issues had become increasingly indifferent. He seemed more enamored with the idea of rekindling his relationship with his ex than nurturing our family. I felt like a ghost in my own home, and that was not how I wanted to live. I wanted my boys to grow up in a loving and stable environment, free from the toxicity that had seeped into our lives. As I filed the paperwork, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. I was saying goodbye to a chapter of my life that had once been filled with love and hope. But I was also stepping into a new future, one where I could be an example of strength for my children. I took a deep breath, knowing I was making the right choice. The legal process would be complicated, especially with shared investments and financial entanglements. But I was prepared to fight for what was mine. I had built a solid foundation for my life, and I was determined to protect it. But just as I thought I was gaining some control over my circumstances, my husband confronted me about the divorce. He was angry and desperate, trying to convince me to reconsider. But I stood firm, knowing deep down that this was my chance to rewrite my story. I was no longer willing to be a pawn in his emotional game. As I navigated the legal complexities, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face whatever came my way. Part 6. A New Dawn. The divorce proceedings were exhausting, emotionally and legally. Sorting through joint investments, setting up custody arrangements for my boys, and dealing with the emotional fallout of my marriage was no small task. But with each passing day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The moment I signed the final paperwork, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer tied to someone who had disregarded our vows. I was free to focus on my life and my children. I embraced my independence fully, knowing that I had the strength to create a new life for us. I started to rebuild my world, focusing on my career and my twin boys. I poured my energy into my work, and with the support of my parents and friends, I began. I was no longer just a wife. I was a mother, a professor, and a woman reclaiming her power. I made a promise to myself that I would prioritize my happiness and my children's well-being above all else. The journey wasn't easy, but I learned that I could lean on my support system, and that made all the difference. I found solace in my work, joy in my children, and strength in my newfound independence. As I looked toward the future, I felt hopeful. I was a survivor, and I would continue to thrive. I had faced the storm and emerged stronger than before. My heart was healing, and I was ready to embrace whatever life had in store for me. This was my new beginning, and I was determined to make the most of it.